This is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today I have a very special treat for you. What this video is going to answer is probably my #1 asked Dehydrator question. And the question is simply this: John, I see you sell the Sedona Dehydrator and the Excalibur. Which one should I buy? Well, I already have two videos in detail comparing the two machines. The first video I did was when I got the Sedona Dehydrator about 10 months ago now. And I unboxed it on the video and compared this side by side, the features, one against the other. So I'd encourage you to watch that video to see the difference between them, because I'm not really going to get into that too much today. The second video I did was an actual real world kale chip dehydration contest where I dehydrated kale chips in both dehydrators to see how they would fare. Now this was probably done about 9 months ago, and so that also shows some more further information and comparisons regarding the machines. Now at present time, it has been 10 months since I received the Sedona Dehydrator, and I have been operating it in my kitchen during that time. Actually, in most cases, right next to, side by side, the Excalibur Dehydrator, so that I can personally compare and see how both units function when they're running right next to each other for a long period of time. Now, I've definitely taken my time to figure out how they work, all the intricacies of both machines, and I'm going to explain that to you today to let you know which machine may be best for you. So pretend for a moment that I'm a car salesman and I'm a dealership and I'm selling Porsches and also Corvettes. And as you know, Porsche and Corvettes are both sports cars and they go really fast, and I don't know which one these days goes faster depending on the make or model you get, but they're both high performance sports cars. And that's how I would consider the dehydrators. These are both high performance dehydrators compared to the things you'd buy at the local department store. These are definitely the two top machines. Now, a guy that's really into Porsches would say, oh, buy the Porsche, it's better. A guy that's really into Corvettes would say, buy the Corvette, it's better. I mean, they both have their pros and cons that make either car better or worse than the other. But in the end, they'll both get you from point A to point B. And that's what both these dehydrators will do. They'll basically take your food and dehydrate out the liquid out of them so that you can preserve them and save them for later use. So which one of these is better? Well, I don't know. I'm not really an Excalibur fan or a Sedona fan. What I'm a fan of is I'm a fan of items that work well with minimal amount of hassle. Now my perfect dehydrator is neither one of these. That has yet to be invented. I would like one with a lot more features, and actually a lot more affordable prices than actually both these machines. But that being said, these are the two best units on the market at this time for people into living in raw foods. So first I want to get into a qualifier. If you are into living in raw foods, you want to continue to watch this video, because the Sedona specifically has been made for raw foodists. So it's a raw friendly dehydrator. Now if you want to dehydrate meats and jerky, turkey jerky, chicken jerky, beef jerky, fish jerky, and things like that, you could stop watching this video right now, because I would straight up recommend the Excalibur for you. The reason for this is that the Excalibur basically has a higher top end range, and it was designed from the ground up for dehydrating everything, whereas the Sedona was specifically designed for raw foods, and people into raw foods are concerned about keeping and maintaining the temperature at 118 degrees or below. So while you can dehydrate meats in the Sedona, because the temperature doesn't fluctuate as much and get quite as hot, the manufacturers of the Sedona recommend that you pre-cook your meats before dehydrating them in the Sedona. And actually that's a USDA standard, that the USDA recommends that you pre-cook your meats before dehydrating in any dehydrator. But the Sedona, it's much more mandatory than with the Excalibur. The Excalibur that I know of, they don't actually recommend that you pre-cook your meats. So that's an easy decision right there. If you do want to dehydrate a lot of meats, then the Excalibur would be your best choice by far. And once again, there are many different models of the Excalibur, and the one I'm comparing the Sedona to today is the Excalibur 3900. That's a top grade deluxe model at this time. The next thing I want to talk about is the temperature fluctuation, because that is an issue for some people, especially if you are into what's called the raw foods diet, living foods diet, where you don't want to exceed 118 degrees, because at 118 degrees the food disintegrates. Actually, just kidding. What happens at 118 degrees, the enzyme content or the enzymes in the food start to degrade and go down. And what that means is it's lowering the nutrition and the enzymatic activity of the foods. And people into living and raw foods diets believe that the enzymes are a vital factor and really important in foods, and they want to keep those enzymes active at all costs. So in the previous video, when I did the kale chips and boat dehydrators, I set boat dehydrators at 118 degrees because that's what the average person would do. Oh, I wanted 118 degrees. I'm going to set it for 118 degrees. So I set the Excalibur at 118 and the Sedona at 118. And I also measured the temperature inside them with an additional thermometer, and that's something that I'd also recommend you do as well. It can be useful to see if the dehydrator is acting like it should, and you can kind of just keep tabs on it. It's especially important in the Excalibur. So I set the Excalibur to 118 degrees, and it got up to like 128 degrees, and I set the Sedona for 118 degrees, and it got to like 108. So it didn't even quite get to 118 degrees. So it was a little bit kind of funny. Since that time, the Tribest people, or the Sedona dehydrator, basically went into a new revision where they adjusted the temperature. So now it should, if you set it to 118 degrees, it should go up to 118 degrees, but not exceed that. So this is another point that I really want to show comparing these two dehydrators right now. This is published by the Sedona people, the Tribest company. And I don't know if you can see that on the camera there, but this is a graph. And this is a graph of the temperature. So say you set the temperature on the Excalibur for 118 degrees, and this is a graph once again. The line here denotes 118 degrees constant temperature. The Excalibur, which is said on here, leading competitor, basically will fluctuate. And the Excalibur will fluctuate significantly over the set temperature and then go underneath it just a little bit, and once again over and under. Now the dehydrator cycle the temperature much like your heater in your house heater. You set it for 65 degrees or whatever, and it's a feedback system. The heater kicks on, it keeps checking. Okay, is it 65 degrees yet? Is it 65 degrees yet? And then if it isn't, it stays on. And if it is, oh man, the heater says, it's 66 degrees, okay, turn it off. And then the heater shuts off. Well, that's how the dehydrators work. If the dehydrators maintain a constant temperature, what would happen is cause caking or case hardening, where the outside would be dehydrated and the inside would still be moist, and you would get food spoilage. So both these dehydrators fluctuate the temperature up and down. Now you can see here on the Sedona, if you set it at 118 degrees, the curve is much lower and actually not as wide of a swing. It gets up to 118 on the peaks, but then may fluctuate down. I don't know how many actual degrees down, but it looks significantly less than the fluctuation on the Excalibur. And then it just maintains that temperature. So the Sedona people would call this overheat protection, so that it never exceeds your set temperature. Once again, this feature is very important for people into raw foods. So if you're into raw foods, the Sedona is basically a no hassle. You're guaranteed the temperature you're set at or under. And on the Excalibur, most people set the Excalibur to about 105 degrees. And some people may think that 105 degrees is the temperature that enzymes start to degrade. But that's the temperature you need to set the Excalibur at, because it fluctuates up at least 10 degrees to keep it below 118 degrees. And then again, if you set it for 105, and actually every Excalibur dehydrator may be a little bit different because it's not solid states, it may fluctuate up and down, and that's why I recommend the Taylor thermometer and timer, so you can see the hottest temperature that it gets up to. Nonetheless, the fluctuation is more So that may mean the Excalibur is quicker to dehydrate than the Sedona. I can tell you when I set the Excalibur to 105 and the Sedona to 118 degrees, so we're comparing apples to apples, the Excalibur always finishes more quickly the dehydration task than the Sedona. Maybe that's because the temperature doesn't quite fluctuate as much. So what does that mean? That means in the long run, the Excalibur is going to be done quicker and also cost you less money to run because it's going to be done faster. On the flip side, what I like to equate this to is, sun drying versus shade drying. So if you're an herbalist, you will know for like herbs that are very precious and can be medicinal, you want to preserve all those nutritional and medicinal properties in those herbs. And to dry your herbs, you put them in the shade, much like they have shade dried coffee. And that maintains more of the flavor, more of the freshness, and more of the nutrition in the food that you're dehydrating. So in my opinion, the Sedona is more like shade drying because it will take a little bit longer, but you're probably going to get a higher quality outcome in the end, whereas the Excalibur is more like the sun drying, and it's going to happen a little bit quicker, and you may not get quite as high quality as with the Sedona. So besides the temperature fluctuation and which one takes longer to dehydrate, which are both important considerations, is the price. Once again, at present time, the Sedona is about $150 more than the Excalibur 9 tray 3900 model. So I guess the big question for me is the Sedona worth $150 more money? And for me, I have my answer, and maybe I'll explain that at the end of this video. But for you, it may be different. I mean, the build construction quality of each machine, I definitely think the Sedona has a much higher and better build than the Excalibur. This is a lot more durable unit, better and well engineered. Of course, there's little minute differences, such as the door that just hangs on. And I can't tell you how many times I've dropped this door. Whereas on the Sedona, it's hinged and it folds down. Another thing that's different is the glass. This is real glass, not some shoddy plastic. You could actually look through the glass to see if what you're dehydrating is done. That's convenience. And on the Excalibur, you need to remove the solid door to see if it's done. Another thing, of course, are the controls. The controls are on the back of the Excalibur. If you're trying to set your dehydrator late at night in the dark, it's not happening. You got to turn your light on. And you got to reach in the back. A lot of times, the Excalibur is put on your countertop in your kitchen and slid back. So this is actually underneath the part where your cabinets are. So it's not too convenient to get to, whereas the Sedona is actually right on the front. In addition, the Sedona has a nice digital display. You can see the actual set temp, and also you'll see the countdown timer. And that can be very convenient. You can also set this for continuous running. Another factor for some people that may be important is the noise. I have had a number of complaints over the years. John, I got the Excalibur and it just sounds really loud. Well, that's true. This has an AC motor. It pushes a lot of air, and it's a little bit, it definitely is louder than the Sedona. And furthermore, the Sedona has a button over here, and I can't see it right here. But the Sedona has a button for day and night mode. And day mode, the Sedona runs the fans at full blast. And in night mode, it actually quiets it down to like a lower speed, so it's actually quieter. So if you're having guests or company over and you still want the dehydrator to dehydrate while your guests are over, but not disturb you as much, you can turn it on night mode so that it's a lot more quiet. In addition, the Sedona has an energy saving feature where you can turn on only the top half of the machine or the bottom half of the machine. So you're only running half the energy to dehydrate only half of the machine, whereas on the Excalibur you have to run the whole machine all the time, even if you just fill it half full. So this can save you energy and money if you intend to run the machine not entirely full. Another thing about the Sedona and the Excalibur is the size. The Excalibur holds more produce because the tray size is larger that you've seen on the other videos. On the Sedona, the tray size is a little bit smaller, so it doesn't quite hold the same amount of produce. That being said, it's still fairly close. The Sedona, on the other hand, has smaller trays, so it'll fit in more easily when cleaning it in your kitchen sink, whereas the Excalibur trays are a little bit larger and they may be a little bit harder to clean in your sink. So in addition, the Excalibur brand dehydrators have 3 different sizes. It comes in a 4 tray, a 5 tray, and a 9 tray, where the Sedona only comes in one size, the 9 tray. So if you are considering a smaller size dehydrator, well then of course, then you're going to have to go with the Excalibur, because the Sedona is one size fits all. So another thing that may be important to you is the clearance between the trays. The Excalibur has a 3/4 inch clearance between the trays, and the Sedona has a 1 inch. So that's 25% more space in between the trays if you want to cut things taller or you have some wavy kale leaves to dehydrate. So this may also be advantageous to you. Another thing that I believe is super important when deciding on an appliance or basically anything to buy is the warranty that's included. Now the Sedona dehydrator has a 5-year warranty, and the Excalibur 3900 model has a 10-year warranty. So I mean, for less money you get twice the warranty than the Sedona. So of course, in that situation, the Excalibur easily wins. Once again, if the Sedona breaks down in year 6, you're going to have to pay money to basically get it fixed and repaired. That being said, if you do need to get your Sedona or your Excalibur repaired, I highly encourage you to save the original shipping box that the machine comes in. The shipping boxes that the machine comes in are designed perfectly to fit the machine so that they will not be damaged in shipping. In most cases, you will need to send the machine in for service should you require it. So next, let's talk about the failure rate of both machines. I have been selling Excaliburs for over 10 years now, and it actually has a small percentage of people having problems with it going defective and burning out. Because they have been made for a long time, they've pretty much got all the bugs and kinks worked out of it. And it's a really dependable machine. The Sedona, on the other hand, is just a brand new released model that was released actually earlier this year. So I have had some customers report that the heating elements have gone out on them and some other minor issues with the Sedona. That being said, the manufacturer will take care of those under warranty at no cost to the customer if that should occur. So for the durability and warranty, I have to say the Excalibur definitely is on top of the Sedona. So we could go down the list of certain bullet points on what machine wins at certain categories. So for example, I could say if quietness is important to you, you want a quiet dehydrator, guess what? Go with the Sedona. If you want one that is a smart dehydrator, computer controlled, and you're going to be assured the temperature will not rise above a certain temperature, guess what? Go with the Sedona. If you want a dehydrator that has a digital control panel up front that's easy to access and look at and know what's going on with the dehydrator, go with the Sedona. If you want a machine that has a long warranty and that's going to give you many years of probably trouble-free service, then go with the Excalibur. They have a proven track record and have twice the warranty of the Sedona. If you want a machine that costs less money, then guess what? Go with the Excalibur. It's actually less money than the Sedona. So if you want a machine that has a better build quality overall, I would say go with the Sedona. It's a little bit better insulated and just a little bit higher quality machine overall than the Excalibur. If you want a machine that dehydrates quickly, then guess what? Based on my test running them side by side, the Excalibur finishes always quicker. Then you want to go with the Excalibur. But on the other hand, if you want to be assured that you're going to have the highest quality dehydrated foods ever, go with the Sedona, because it is, once again, running at a lower temperature, and it's like the shade drying versus sun drying. If you want a machine that will save you money in the long run because you're only going to run it half full a lot of the time, then guess what? You can turn off the fans on the bottom or top half of the Sedona, and this is the machine you should go for. Or actually just buy the smaller size Excalibur. With the Sedona, you have the flexibility to run it full or half full depending on your needs and what you're dehydrating at the time. If you like convenience, such as the glass door on the Sedona, you could actually literally look in to see if what you're dehydrating is done, and some of the other features, then the Sedona, in my opinion, is much more convenient than the Excalibur. If you want more space to dehydrate your food in the same size, obviously 9 tray versus 9 tray, then guess what? Go with the Excalibur. It has more square footage on the inside than the Sedona. If you want to dehydrate meats, then guess what? You shouldn't still be watching this video because I told you about that earlier, but you want to go with the Excalibur. If you're into raw foods and are concerned once again about the temperature, because the temperature seems to be really important to raw foodists, and actually I would argue with that. I think there's things besides the temperature in raw foods that are much more critical. Then actually you want to probably go with the Sedona because it's going to maintain that temperature that people into raw and living foods are looking for. If you want to not have to babysit your dehydrator to have it turn off automatically, once again getting back to the convenience features, go with the Sedona. The Excalibur 3900 that we offer does not have a built-in timer. That being said, you can get a simple plug-in appliance timer. There may be $10 at a big box store that controls your Christmas tree lights to turn them on and off, to control the Excalibur to turn it on and off whenever you need. If you want the best bang for the buck, I mean spending the least amount of bucks and getting the most bang, guess what? Go for the Excalibur. It's definitely less money. If you want to dehydrate things that are tall, so the things that I could think of that would be tall, like watermelon. You can slice watermelon like 3/4 of an inch tall, and it'll just dehydrate into like a flat sheet of literally like watermelon candy, like a watermelon Jolly Rancher, man. It's so good, dehydrated watermelon. And you could do thicker slices in the Sedona, but not the Excalibur, because the Excalibur has a 3/4 inch between the trays, and the Sedona has a full inch. If you want long-term reliability, then guess what? Go with the Excalibur. It's time proven to have long-term durability because it's been out on the market for many years, and the Sedona is a brand new machine. So if you want to support Americans and buy an American-made product, guess what? Go with the Excalibur. The Excalibur is still made in the good old US of A. If you want a machine that's more quiet, guess what? You're going to have to go with the Sedona. It's definitely more quiet than the Excalibur. If you're from Europe and use Celsius instead of Fahrenheit, then there's only one choice, the Sedona, because you can select Celsius or Fahrenheit temperature, whereas the Excalibur comes only in Fahrenheit as sold in the US. So if you're serious about learning about dehydration and how to dehydrate anything under the sun without an additional purchase of a book, you want to go with the Excalibur. At present time, the Excalibur 3900 model includes a Preserve It Naturally book, which is like a 200-page book. It even has one chapter on raw foods that will be instrumental in teaching you everything you need to know about dehydration. So as you just heard, the Excalibur has some advantages and the Sedona has some advantages. And you might still be thinking, John, which one should I get? Well, you have to lay it out and see what's important to you, and maybe you should make a list. What's most important to you is, I need it quiet, man, because I hate noise in my kitchen. Well, guess what? Then the Sedona is for you. Maybe the most important factor to you is how much it costs. Then if the most important factor is how much it costs, then guess what? Go with the Excalibur. It's less money. Maybe the most important factor for you is that it has a long warranty. Well, then guess what? Then the Excalibur is going to be the better deal for you because it has twice the warranty of the Sedona. Maybe what's more important to you is the aesthetics. And definitely on the aesthetics, I think the Sedona wins it. So then you'd want to go with the Sedona. So it comes down to just figuring out what your priorities are and getting the machine that's best going to meet your needs. So based on my needs and what's important to me on my priority list, I mean, I'm a fairly frugal guy. And what's important to me is the price, and also to me is the warranty. I want a machine that's going to be durable and it's going to last. And before the Sedona came out, I urged the manufacturer that it needs to be less money, than the current selling price. It needs to be more in line with the Excalibur. And if they did that, then I would probably just say go with the Sedona if they were the same price. But unfortunately, the Sedona is, significantly more money, in my opinion, than the Excalibur. So for me personally, what I like to use in my home, basically because of the price and the warranty are important to me, is the Excalibur. Of course, if I'm going to dehydrate some herbs or something from my garden and I want to keep the utmost level of nutrients and make sure it's raw, I'm going to use the Sedona. But basically, I own both machines, so I use both in my kitchen side by side, and when it's tomato season, I have both these babies dehydrating. So whatever dehydrator you choose, feel confident that I use both of these machines in my kitchen, and they both have been working just great for me. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and it's answered some questions for you about which dehydrator would be best for you. So once again, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors.